actually brought you on because I wanted to explore making unconventional choices in adulthood.
I'm a business owner and entrepreneur, former Peace Corps volunteer. I spent so much of my childhood and time growing up kind of feeling this pressure to conform to what so many others wanted of me and had expectations of me.
Let me put myself in my old age. What am I gonna regret and what am I not gonna regret? And it's never gonna be the bold choice to try something.
I've looked at other people with a lot of jealousy about how things have come together.
Same. Take me back to Africa. Tell me things about what it's like to live there, like long term. Sam Rowen.
Devon Werkheiser.
Woo! Good to have you in the hot seat today, Sam.
Thanks. We're setting a record on the Growing Up podcast today.
What's that?
Lowest profile guest you've ever had.
It's true. Your lowest profile for everyone listening and watching.
True.
You're not low profile for me in my heart, okay?
Aw, that's so sweet.
Okay. Sam is one of the producers of this podcast and helps make it possible, but that's not why I brought you on today.
It's not?
No, I actually brought you on because I wanted to explore making unconventional choices in adulthood and in early adulthood. Because I think that's something that, I know my life is unconventional, and I think it's something that a lot of young people are finding themselves curious about or exploring. And it's something you've done, you did, and you're doing.
Yeah, I'm a business owner and entrepreneur, former Peace Corps volunteer. I spent so much of my childhood and time growing up kind of feeling this pressure to conform to what so many others wanted of me and had expectations of me. And I decided, especially during this kind of like post-college experience that I had, to really try and break out of that mold. And I think it served me incredibly well. And the concept of risk-taking and making unconventional choices is one that I now recommend to all young adults that I talk to. And is honestly one of the driving forces behind Onomie, the company that produces this podcast, because really what we're trying to do is empower young adults to make a lot of these critical early life choices. And, when I take a step back, I think about so much pressure that I had as a kid to, go down, the path to potentially becoming a lawyer or to, try and apply for the same sort of internships that my fellow, colleagues in college were going for. Yeah. And ultimately what I found was that I could actually find a lot more meaning in my life by pursuing things that I was more interested in and pursuing things that were on the surface a little bit more risk-taking. But that ultimately has kind of provided me the foundation to which I'm kind of establishing my life and my business now.
Wow. Where'd you go to college?
University of Michigan. Go Blue.
Hey, all right.
Yeah.
Ann Arbor, right?
Ann Arbor. It was an awesome place. Yeah. I met incredible people there. Yeah. Some of my lifelong friends are from my time at Michigan. Had a ton of fun time, attending football games. It was just such a great school for school spirit. Sure. Big Ten school, crushing the Nittany Lions year after year.
You shut up, Sam. You shut up. Both my parents went to Penn State. I'm a Penn Stater by birth. All right, go PSU.
But I had this really big existential crisis. Maybe crisis is a strong word, but I was dealing with a lot in college around trying to balance the expectations that I had for what constituted a successful career.
Yeah.
And ultimately what I really wanted to do and the space that I wanted to give myself to explore all the life options that were ahead of me upon graduating.
What'd you study?
I studied Middle Eastern studies and political science.
Whoa.
Yeah. Completely out there.
Yeah. I was going to say, that's not lawyer or doctor.
It's not. And, and I don't think there was anyone in particular who kind of put those expectations on me, but I just felt like going through the education system, there's just so many people who are so clear about what path that they want to take in their lives.
For
and
sure.
Some of them are just have known since childhood, I want to do this, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And that was never really me.
Yeah.
But I knew that I kind of wanted to give myself the space to explore real meaning in my career and in my personal life. And I wasn't really going to get that space if I followed a more traditional career path.
Man.
It's so many of my colleagues went into consulting and finance and got really nice paying jobs out of college, really, really nice. Whereas I went to go work for free for a couple of years, basically.
Wow.
And there's a privilege associated with doing that for sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's also a decision that is paying so many dividends for me, not just in terms of enriching my life, but also financially too.
Yeah. So out of college, what'd you do?
I went into the Peace Corps, which is a 2-year service program overseas. Now they actually let you pick for like new Peace Corps volunteers. They let them pick where they want to go. I did not have that choice. I was just assigned a country. So I went to Cameroon in Central Africa for about 27 months, a little over 2 years.
Wow. And no returning back to the U.S.?
I did one time.
Wow. In those 27 months?
In those 27 months. But I was in a small rural village called Onomie in the southern part of Cameroon, right by the border to Gabon and Equatorial Guinea. Like a really remote village. I was about 2 hours away from the next closest volunteer. And it was a French-speaking country, so I had to learn a new language when I was there as well. And I was just immersed into this really small community of about like 50 people in this small, like essentially suburb of this village where I lived and worked for about two plus years.
Wow. Okay. So I want to know so much about that time, but before, what was it like making the decision to do that? Like you're in college, you're in Ann Arbor, you're having a great time, you're meeting people, you're studying your Middle Eastern studies and political science, which maybe could take you into some form of politics or diplomacy or something there. But you know, most people out of college are then going and looking for what's that foothold into their career, right? How did you come to this decision to go take time to go jump into the Peace Corps for 2 years?
Well, initially, when I actually organized like my studies, that is what I wanted to do, was go into politics somehow or go into like the foreign service or something international relations oriented. But as I started to approach graduation, it became clear to me that I didn't actually have a really solid foundation of what I wanted. And so, you know, my thinking was, can I find an experience that provides me the opportunity to really expand my horizons and push myself out of my comfort zone to the point where I actually have that space to really define what it is that I want in my life.
Wow.
And the Peace Corps provided a really awesome opportunity to do that because I was going to get exposed to a completely different culture.
For sure.
You know, a lot of people think of, you know, Peace Corps service as maybe like a travel experience. It was not a travel experience. I mean, I was living and working in an immersive experience.
Yeah.
And that is just a whole kind of like vortex of its own that is just such a great environment for learning. Not just about the world, but about yourself. And that's ultimately what I was craving. And then on top of that too, I just wanted the experience of being able to change my perspective because I felt like I'm someone, I don't know whether this is just kind of innate to me or something that likely a lot of other people experience, but there is just so much, I think, of human nature that pushes you to want to like conform and be like others and, you know, for better or worse, kind of like emulate the way that others are kind of leading their lives or making professional choices or personal choices. And I just felt really overwhelmed by that and kind of wanted a little bit of space to think.
So you went to Central Africa.
I went to Central Africa.
That's a lot of space to think.
It was a lot of space.
Well, because also part of what you're talking about is like, maybe we're conditioned by our family's expectations, but we're also just conditioned by the society we live in. Yeah. And if we don't have that clear desire that we know what we want to do, then it's like, how do you find that? You look around and you go, okay, well, they've got that job, or people took that path, or like that kid in my neighborhood, or like my cousin is doing that. Like maybe I'll do this, or my dad thinks I should do that. You know, if you don't have that clarity of direction, then you're going to, especially as a young person, you're just going to kind of look around to society and family, and what's going to be around more often than not are these traditional kind of conforming ideas.
Totally.
So that makes sense to me why the Peace Corps would be appealing, but also like, whoa, man, that's really brave, I guess is the word, crazy maybe. You said you were looking to get out of your comfort zone. Well, you did that like to the nth degree.
I definitely did, but in some interesting ways too, I kind of entered into a different type of comfort zone. Okay. Which was, I think, really unique and unexpected, but also one of the most beautiful things about the community that I was living in Southern Cameroon. Like it was a small, extremely tight-knit community that embraced, as I think large swaths of Cameroon do, and generally sub-Saharan Africa, of just like this sense of collectivism, right? Like I was part of a small community where everyone kept their doors open and people were just kind of like, the little kids would just run around and go into each other's homes. And it was almost like this vision of, I don't know, like an earlier time in the world, but that people were just kind of like living out. And the level of generosity that existed between people who truly were really impoverished,
Yeah.
but who were leaning on this kind of collective community support system, was in some ways, a sense of community and belonging that I had been looking so hard for. And that really doesn't, at least outside of certain pockets, exist that much in the US today. I mean, like, do you know any of your neighbors?
No. I know
like casually, I'll say hi to some of my neighbors.
But have they ever been inside my house? No.
Yeah.
Like,
it's just like, it's crazy to think, but
it really is.
But I found a sense of that sort of thing in my Peace Corps experience that I think really changed my perspective. And I think in that respect, I kind of was able to find a little bit of what I was looking for, as opposed to like just purely pushing myself out of my comfort zone.
Sure. No, that's amazing. I mean, yeah, those are some primal human necessities, actually.
Totally.
Is feeling part of a village and feeling taken care of, and that you're taking care of others, and that like there's kind of that shared open community and trust, which we just can't have in big cities. There's just too many of us and too much craziness, and we're all too busy. And like, but yeah, we're living the great individual dream here in America, and it can be isolating.
Really lonely. I mean, I don't think there are that many people who are lonely in the village where I lived. And that was super eye-opening for me. Yeah.
Were you lonely there? You're the only American there.
I was. Yeah, I was the only American. I was lonely at times. But I think one of the aspects of Peace Corps service being so long is that you kind of learn to push through the loneliness a little bit. And then you're also bonding with all the people who kind of live in the community and work in the community. And that was really beautiful. Like, I made incredible friends there, people who I'm still in touch with to this day, because now like internet service is so strong there. I can actually like send
that's amazing.
WhatsApp messages back and forth to my friends in Cameroon, which is just really nuts.
Yeah.
To think that I was in this village without running water for 2 years, but they have smartphones.
Wow.
And yeah, the perspective that I gained on life while living there was truly life-changing. Because you're just kind of exposed to something just completely different, and you see a way in which people are so resilient despite facing such difficult odds financially. It's really beautiful. And I strongly encourage people to try and travel as much as they can to areas of the world that they might not otherwise be exposed to.
For sure.
Because I think you can learn a lot about yourself and about the world by traveling to Europe, for example, or to places that are in the quote unquote developed world.
For sure.
But you also get exposure to a very different type of life when you go to the rest of the world.
For sure.
And I think what most people expect to find is like, this area that's downtrodden or, like struggling. But what you actually find in those areas is that people are way more optimistic and have way more hope than people who live in these developed areas, which is such a mindfuck when you think about it.
It really is. Yeah. The most impoverished place I'd ever visited was the slums in Nairobi, Kenya. And I was amazed at that thing that you just said, which is like, I mean, this is a really gnarly area. They are living in like corrugated steel shacks, that are just tiny and dark, and they have nothing. And it's packed too. It's not even like they're out in a village. Like, this is a city slum. It was kind of a wild place to be, but it's so fucking cliche, but like the human spirit that was so at the surface with every kid I talked to and kind of every adult, like the level of humanity and human joy, spirit, emotion, all of it was just like so tangible. Yeah. Where like here, someone with everything might be really fucking numb and cold or detached and distant. It's a mindfuck.
It's like it's been beaten out of us a little bit.
Yeah, or distracted out of us,
Yeah, because we're always
isolated
so busy.
Out of us. Yeah.
That's part of the issue too, is like life is so much slower in those areas to the point where it's for both good and bad. I mean, there are negative aspects of life being really slow. There's no question. There's less fun stuff to do. There's less economic opportunity.
Right.
But when you actually slow life down, I think it allows you to find those nuggets that you can really appreciate. And you're able to really like focus on your passions and give more space to those passions in a way that is so fulfilling for the human spirit.
Yeah. Oh, our world moves too fast for our biology. Like that's just facts, guys. Like our technology has sped up life. It's, we can talk to each other so fast, we can get information so fast. Our biology is not made to move and process that quickly. So it's no wonder we're all fucked up. Yeah. But it's no wonder we're living at a pace that it's exceeding our biology. We can't catch up to how fast we're processing information. But if you're living somewhere where the pace is slower, it makes sense to me that you're able to kind of feel things differently and tap into yourself more.
Yeah. I know you're someone who likes to go and take a couple of days and just completely disconnect.
Absolutely.
What's your process when you get into those moments?
Absolutely. I mean, literally, it takes me a day or two. Sometimes a little 3-day trip isn't long enough because it takes me a day or two just to decompress from the speed of life and the busyness that I'm normally in. And it's literally usually a day or two until I go there's my pace. Here's me slowed down. Here's my beingness. Here's not my busyness, but my beingness. But it takes me being out of my life. It takes me being away from work. It takes me being somewhere where nature is a lot more accessible to me so that I can just walk and look at nature and natural things. And it's a day or two before I feel kind of like I landed in this new space that I'm looking for. But I try and do it, a few times a year. I try and get a little trip or retreat or, my birthday, I spent 3 days by myself. It's needed, guys. We're moving so fast and we're consuming so much information all the time.
People don't spend enough time alone.
No.
They really don't. Because those are the opportunities that you can actually truly find yourself. You know, not everyone needs to go and do 27 months spending a lot of time alone. That's a long time.
Sure.
Right. But giving yourself a little bit of space to think, I think is so critical. Because I think one of the aspects of busy culture is that you're just so overwhelmed by, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, that you kind of lose sight of your purpose.
Yeah.
And actually, after I came back from the Peace Corps, I went to business school, which was, a whole culture shock in and of itself.
Damn.
And then I went to go work for a company for a couple of years prior to launching Onomie. And what I found during that time when I was super busy working for that company is that I didn't even have the space to think about my entrepreneurial ambitions. And I had made a decision when I was in Peace Corps that when I came back to the US, I wanted to start a company. And just getting back into the environment here in the States where everything was just so overwhelming and I just had to do this and had to do this and had to do this.
Yeah.
It was so easy to lose sight of what I ultimately wanted to do and what my ultimate passion was. And it really wasn't until everything just screeched to a halt at the beginning of COVID when I had that space to introspect again about what it is that I really wanted to do. And then, made the decision to take the plunge.
Wow.
And
to leave
to leave the previous company where I was an awesome company, but I was just in meetings all day and it was draining. And I had this kind of moment of realization where I was I made a decision a couple of years ago as to what I wanted to do in the life that I wanted to lead. And I can't let it stray too long before I ultimately give it a try.
And so you founded your own company.
I did, alongside my co-founder, also named Sam. And we just brought on another co-founder, Rami.
The two Sams and Rami. These are my business partners here growing up. So you're kind of living a life of unconventional choices then. I mean, going to business school after the Peace Corps and getting some business experience, that's smart anyways, just to have that experience. Yep. But then to go out and make a startup and try and build something from the ground up, what have you learned about yourself in that process?
Well, I'd say I've learned a lot about myself, but I would say the thing that really kickstarted all of this, which was a realization that I came to in Peace Corps and that I always try and center myself with when I'm going through times of struggle, is the concept of regret minimization, which I think some other guests maybe have touched on this podcast.
Okay.
But this idea that if you picture yourself in old age, kind of looking back and reflecting back on your life, how can you minimize the amount of regret that you might feel as an older person when you look back? And for me, that's kind of been a guiding light when I think about some of the decisions that I've made, including the one to start a business. Yeah. Because I imagined a future version of myself where I kept taking comfortable job after comfortable job, probably making a decent amount of money and getting myself to retirement, but ultimately feeling unsatisfied.
Right.
Because I would look back on this long career and say, I can't believe I never gave it a shot
Yeah,
to try and build something for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I desperately want to avoid, is just that feeling of like, oh man, I'm in old age and I just regret wasting years of my youth. And so ultimately, like that's something that always grounds me. Like when I'm going through tough times, is like, would I rather be in a position right now where I'm super comfortable and feeling, I don't know, like maybe satisfied with where I'm at, but ultimately setting myself up for regret later.
Yeah, I love that. I don't think I do that with my decisions, but I see how that can actually be a good marker, especially if you're like undecided about something or feeling maybe a little fearful about which way you want to go. I think that's actually a good frame to put on it. It's like, all right, let me put myself in my old age. What am I going to regret and what am I not going to regret? And it's never going to be the bold choice to try something. That's what you're going to be like, yeah, I'm glad I fucking did that.
I would much rather try and fail at something, try like something ambitious, than to just kind of coast along and do things that are easy.
Yeah. Forever. Although the failure thing it'll hurt. It'll devastate you. It
hurts. Now some of the lowest days of my life have come in the last couple of years of getting this business off the ground. I'm not kidding.
Yeah. No, I know.
My wife, who's like the most supportive person ever, has seen me in some of these lows.
Yeah.
And like, I've told her on multiple occasions that sometimes coming into work to like try and build a startup is like entering a boxing ring every single day.
Yeah.
And you're just willingly signing yourself up to get the shit kicked out of you every single day.
For sure.
I'm serious. No, like the amount of rejection that we get on a daily basis is horrible.
I know. It's very similar to pursuing the arts.
I'm sure.
Every day is just like, well, fuck. I'm going to get beat up. But yeah, I don't regret it.
It's that underlying hope, right? Yeah. And that optimism that you have that keeps that drive going despite so much rejection.
Well, and any idea you have, right? Like, so in our lives, we have ideas for things and then we have the action we can take on it. And in our head, the steps are very simple. Oh, here's the idea and I just do this thing and then this thing happens, right? Like we create this linear map in our head and it actually seems very like, oh, that's a short distance between me thinking I can do something and me doing it. Nope. Everything takes 10 times as long as you think it's going to take.
Yep.
There's unforeseen obstacles. Nothing goes how you think it's going to go. You also need some fucking divine timing to show up with you.
That's
you need some luck and some doors to open. Like there's so much that goes into what seems so simple at first, which is like, I have this thought for a startup and then I just file for it and I do it. Like, no.
But I think part of the challenge too, and you've touched on this, I rewatched the episode you did with Kendall the other day and you talked about this a lot with him. There's just this idea of comparison being such a driver of these feelings of lacking or feelings of like disappointment. And that I think is true, certainly in your field. It's also true in the entrepreneurship space.
Of course.
Because you are just exposed on a daily basis to all these founders bragging about all the success that they're having. And it's like, man, when is this going to happen to me? What am I doing wrong?
For sure.
Start to question your own sense of like self-worth because, a startup capability, expertise, like all of it just starts to come under question in a way that's so debilitating. Like I started therapy during this journey of being a founder.
Good man.
And it's been huge because the mental load is just overwhelming. And like that aspect of it too is one of the biggest challenges that I try and talk to aspiring founders about because the path to your point is not linear to success. It's fraught with a lot of like really low lows. They're really high highs too.
For sure.
And things that are just so unexpected and awesome that you're like, oh my God, like I can't believe this is happening. And not to flatter you too much, but like the lunch that we had when we initially were like eating like extremely spicy chicken sandwiches and talking about the concept behind this podcast was one of the highs that we've had in like our early journey here at Onomie. There have been days that have been like that. And there have been days where I am like, I cannot, like I need to find a way to get out of bed. And on top of that too, I need to put a smile on my face because every single employee and partner and investor is looking to make sure that I'm not showing any sign of weakness. Which is just this dichotomy that is exhausting. Exhausting at best, like completely debilitating at worst. It's
no joke needing to, it's no joke when it is all on you. And it's not. You have employees, you have help, you have support, but like, oh, this startup only starts up if I start up. Like this thing only happens if I keep taking action with it. And for sure, there's times when the emotions don't want you to take action.
That's very true. Yeah. I had this like meta moment the other day where I was just thinking really big picture, just about all the trials and tribulations that we've had getting Onomie off the ground.
Yeah.
And thinking of it almost as like a microcosm of what we are doing at Onomie is like trying to help guide people through all these different like challenges that they're dealing with. And that was just kind of like a beautiful realization in my head of just like, okay, our mission as a company is to help people navigate a lot of these challenges. That's what we do on this podcast. And what you educate all the listeners on through interviews is like how to navigate this sense of feeling lost and finding purpose. And ultimately that's what we're trying to do in all of our different content series.
Yeah.
And it's just, I sometimes need to like turn that advice inward to myself because I'm going through it on a daily basis and really struggling with it, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I understand. It's so interesting too. So Sam never watched Ned's, but he founded a company that was about helping adults through the struggles of like early adulthood and giving them the tools to set up their adult lives, whether it's like finances or self-help or whatever, organizing. Like Sam wants to empower adults to like find their way to their life. But Sam had never watched Ned's. Luckily.
Now I've watched it.
Thanks, Guy. Luckily, Rami had watched Ned's. And I mean, this whole thing came about so organically. And I will say, just you being you and Rami being Rami is like what made me feel good about signing on to work with you guys, even though like Onomie was just starting and like, you know, didn't have much going yet. For me, when it comes to collaborating with people, I really listen to like my intuition on if I trust if people are like good in the ways that I'm good. Like we need to kind of have a similar sensibility. And yeah, just kind of from the beginning, I was like, no, I feel good. Like I feel safe and good about working with you guys. And yeah, this whole podcast came about so organically. Like Rami asked to meet just because Onomie's brand and my Ned brand is so aligned in theme and in mission, about making people feel less alone about what they're struggling with and that like we're all going to get through it together. Rami knew that overlap and was like, well, we should meet with him just to like maybe create content, maybe do a series with you guys. And yeah, I told them like, you know, I've been wanting to do a podcast and I just need producers for it. And bam, here we are.
Off to the races.
Yeah, here we are. How many episodes are we in? 20? 25. Woo!
Ooh, it's amazing.
Woo! Yeah. Man, life's so interesting. I'm so grateful for the things. I'm so grateful for who you are and the choices you've made because it's led to a point in my life where now it's like provided this podcast for me. And we are aligned in why we want to do these things.
Yeah.
And I just think that's cool.
Likewise, I'm so grateful to you because I think one of the things that makes you such an awesome podcast host and such a perfect fit for the series that like we're all creating together is that you're just so open and transparent about the challenges that you're dealing with, the highs and the lows. Like you're not sugarcoating anything.
No.
Which is what this generation needs.
Yeah.
You know, because we're fed so much, you know, bullshit for lack of a better term.
For real.
From people who are only presenting like the best versions of themselves.
Yeah.
And technology has made that so easy to only present the best versions of yourselves, right? You don't get to see anyone behind the curtain and like what they've actually been struggling with.
For sure.
And a lot of times, even the stuff that people like will post to social media about their struggles feels very performative. So you're not even getting like the true, genuine feelings.
Yes.
Whereas you're just so raw on this show. And that was very clear from the time in which we even did that social series together.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what makes this show so powerful.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I value, first of all, I don't know how to turn it off, like just openness. Like I don't know how to not be at this point. But also I really value authenticity. And maybe it worked out that like my career went the way it did because also sometimes you maybe hear the person who literally has everything giving you advice on how you get there. And it's just like, you're so far along. Like you really are disconnected from the shit, from the struggle at this point, you know?
You also learn from talking to those people how much luck played a factor in their success, which successful people are oftentimes very hesitant to talk about.
Yeah.
Because I think once you get to a certain level of success, you start to, I don't know, smell your own shit and think it tastes great or think it smells great or whatever. And you get to this spot where it's like, oh yeah, like I can attribute every single good thing that's happened to me to like my own ingenuity.
Yes.
You know, and that's never the case.
Yeah.
You know, like everyone has had those moments where things just kind of aligned.
Yeah.
I've had plenty of those in my life. I've had plenty of times in my life where things have fallen apart that I didn't expect. And I was like, oh shit, like this really sucks. And I've looked at other people with a lot of jealousy about how things have come together.
Same.
But acknowledging that luck is just an important factor in everything that happens, and timing and being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Like
there's a humility to that.
Yeah.
Like there's a humility to that sometimes if people forget like how much luck played a part, they miss.
Yeah. And I've gotten so much advice from people over the years that I've heard the advice and I'm like, okay, this sounds wrong.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds wrong because I'm being told it by someone who was able to kind of like coast to success in a certain way.
Right.
On the backs of a lot of luck.
Right.
Combined with like their own set of skills that might be unique, but that's just such an important factor in everything.
For real.
I think we can be kinder to ourselves by acknowledging that.
Yes, we can. Take me back to Africa. Tell me things about what it's like to live there, like long term. Well, where you were in Cameroon, like to live there long term. Like, do you still think about your time there? Do you kind of like, there are times in my life that I go back to, like, kind of, I bring myself back there in like a sense memory way. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if you like kind of miss Cameroon like that, or like put yourself there sometimes.
I do, because it holds such a special place in my heart as like a place where it's a kind of everything the point of like everything we've discussed, I really like found myself, and I found such a nice community and met such nice people and generous people. I mean, a couple of things come to mind. The projects that I was focused on while there are so meaningful to me, and that I still try and keep tabs on even years later.
Wow.
Stuff like building a library in my local community, which I spent so much time doing.
Wow.
It was the first like educational resource built for the public that exists in the southern region of Cameroon.
Wow.
Stuff like working at the local hospital with HIV patients because the rate of HIV was so high in my area of Cameroon. Started a scholarship program in conjunction with my Cameroonian counterpart there that empowers young girls to go to school because the rate of girls in school is just so much lower as you advance in age.
Yeah.
And like all those projects carry so much meaning to me. And they were things that we were able to execute on a really grassroots level that like still provide me inspiration. I'm still really proud of, amongst like the most proud accomplishments of my life. And so I still do think about those times. And then just like on an interpersonal level, I crave a lot of the simplicity of what life was like there.
Yeah.
Just being able to roll out of bed in the morning and like go out and like grab a coffee with my neighbors. And, if I wanted to hang out somewhere at night, I would like, text my friends, and all of a sudden we'd be at the bar like a couple hours later, and like we'd all just be hanging out and being like able to shoot the shit. Like think about how hard that is to pull off here.
Right.
Like I don't think I could get more than 3 friends together for like 2 weeks. Like I was like everyone would be like, that day doesn't work. Oh, that day doesn't work.
For sure.
But when you're living kind of at that slower pace and everything is so much more simple, it's just easy to like find that human connection and make stuff happen really quickly.
Yeah. I know like we're going to be exploring friendship on this podcast sometimes, because a lot of people ask about it, especially making friends as an adult. And in our society, I have a lot of great friends, but it's hard because of that thing. Our adult lives are all so busy in different ways that, lining up, like hanging out with a friend, it's not as easy as just like, hey, you around?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's get together. It's like, you got to put it on the fucking calendar.
Totally. I think that's why so many people kind of glorify like their high school and college years, right? It's because there was a time when we had less responsibility. People were just around. And you could just throw stuff together. And
you could just exist together.
Life as an adult, unfortunately, is just not like that.
No.
But I had a little bit of a taste of that when I was in Cameroon, and that's something that I really crave.
That's beautiful. And we talked about loneliness, but I wanted to, and like being alone out there and taking the time to be able to reflect on what you want and who you are and what you feel about the world. But I did want to bring up a distinction, or just explore a distinction between, or a relationship between loneliness and solitude. Solitude, there's this poet, Rilke, who talks a lot about solitude in ways that speak deeply to me. If you're listening at home and have never read Letters to a Young Poet, I really recommend it. Super short book. It's 10 letters that this Rilke wrote in a pen palship, in the early 1900s. But in it, he's kind of giving advice on life to this young poet, and he speaks a lot of the importance of solitude and how many of us are running from it and never experience it. Even if we're feeling lonely, even if we're actually alone, not actually being in relationship to our own solitude, and the fact that solitude is a part of our human experience. It's actually an essential part of our human experience. Until you've kind of met yourself in great solitude, you haven't really met yourself. You've met yourself in relation to others, which is a different part of our life. But I could imagine being in another continent, another country, another culture, not speaking the language, being a long time of solitude, even though you're also experiencing this great community.
Yeah, it was a long time of solitude. Interestingly enough, because I was the only foreigner living in the community, I was also at the same time a bit of a celebrity.
And so maybe that's Sam.
Exactly. So everyone knew who I was, and so everyone would approach me everywhere I went.
So you missed the attention.
Not at all. The attention was the most exhausting part. And one of the reasons why I often sought solitude, just like in the confines of my own house, because I was like, oh my God, I can't deal with this anymore.
That's so funny.
That was the biggest challenge. Yeah. I felt like, honestly, probably how you feel sometimes when you're going around and everyone's approaching you and everyone's recognizing you and looking at you. Like, it was obvious I was the foreigner in the community I was in.
Right.
And it was overwhelming at times.
Do you hear that, Americans? He was the foreigner in the country, and he was revered and treated well and curious about, and people supported him.
Well, that was the most fun aspect of it in some ways too, is because everyone was so excited to show off their culture to me that I got invited to everyone's homes for dinner, and like everyone was so excited to share their lives.
That's the right way. That's the right way to feel about someone different in your community, is like, oh, hi, how cool is this? How different we are, but how human we all are. Come see my humanity. Come in, fellow friend. Not this crazy fucking other shit we experience here sometimes.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, none of that there.
None of that there.
Okay, good.
I think there is like a very complex colonial history in the country of Africa. I mean, in the continent of Africa.
For sure.
Which has applied itself different in different countries.
Yeah.
But there very much is, very righteously, by the way, there's like kind of an anger towards a lot of the former colonial powers.
Yeah.
But that I never felt expressed to me as an individual.
Yeah.
Which I thought was just such a unique and stark contrast, I think, to the way in which people in the US look at immigrant communities. And I just found that so humbling that I was like so well received in this area that, like colonialism had really done a number on in terms of like the construction of their governments, entrenched corruption and so much legacy that in reality was not from that long ago. Like colonial Africa was the thing in the 1960s.
For sure.
It was not that long ago.
For sure. And that was a French colony?
French colony.
Yeah. Do you speak French?
I do, a little bit. I speak with a very Cameroonian accent. So when I talk to people in France, they're like, where are you from? Like,
that's awesome.
Which is very cool.
Yeah.
But that's kind of one of the other things that I saw value in that's a bit more tangible from my time in the Peace Corps was all the transferable skills of like building connection, learning another language, getting comfortable with like being adaptable and flexible.
Yeah.
Like, those are all transferable skills that I look for when I'm like hiring people for the business.
Definitely.
And that I think goes underappreciated as we're all on social media constantly getting browbeaten by like these guys who are like, oh, you need to like major in something that like is valuable for your career.
Yeah.
I've hired young people for Onomie there's very little that someone who's like majored in something quote unquote practical can do that someone who has majored in something that's not practical, like can do, that can't be taught in like a couple of like weeks of on the job training.
Right.
So like study what you're interested in, pull the transferable skills out of it, and you'll be better off for it. That's my stance on it all.
I like it. It's my stance too, is following, man, it doesn't matter if it's logical to take these paths that are put upon you or asked of you. There might be a ton of reason for it and a ton of logic for it. And so you can't go fully wrong. You know, if your parents want you to be a fucking doctor or a lawyer, like, man, my mom was actually just like in the hospital. She's okay. But like nurses, my goodness, they're doing the Lord's work. Like the gratitude I felt for these people who took this path to do this job that's unbelievably difficult, and what an insane place to work.
And thankless too, because no one ever like spends their time to like thank these people.
No, but the gratitude I felt for these people taking care of my mom in such a great way. I'm like, thank God some people are taking this path in life. So like, amazing for that. However, I do fully support, like, what are you interested in? What lights you up? Go towards that, especially while we're young, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's never too late. You can make a life change at 60 and have this whole new life. That would be amazing. But while we're young, we really have a lot of leeway. There's a lot of margin for error. This is the time we should be fucking up and failing. So like, use it to follow what you're interested in. I don't think you'll ever regret it. I guess that's the good mark for it.
Yeah. And in a weird way too, I also think that even people who are just like looking to maximize success as it's like broadly defined, if you take like the 30-year view of success rather than like the 5-year view of success, I actually think that you'll find more like success that drives you by focusing on things that you're interested in rather than just things that are going to make you more money in the short term. You know, there's actually I don't know if you've seen like the Steve Jobs commencement address that he gave at Stanford back, I want to say it was like 2005.
Okay.
He talked a lot about...
I was 14 years old.
I was also 14 years old.
Yeah, I know. We're the same age.
YouTube does exist.
What?
He talks a lot about how he was kind of an aimless college student. And obviously, like, we're talking about Steve Jobs, like ultimately one of the wealthiest people in the history of the world, probably. He was kind of an aimless college student at Reed College in Oregon. And on a whim, because he was interested in it, he decided to take calligraphy classes because he was just interested in learning about how the different ways in which people wrote and different styles of writing and so forth, thinking that there was never going to be a practical application for it. Ultimately, years later, when he kind of like, you know, found himself and decided to start Apple as a business and was building up the software necessary to power the computers, he reached back to some of the stuff that he learned in those calligraphy classes to build out this really unique, at the time, like plethora of fonts and stuff that exist in all the word processing software, because he had kind of like called back to that earlier time in his life when he had decided to just kind of pursue a passion of his. And it actually was something that really enhanced the program that he was creating at Apple. And in the moment, like, would the choice to like go to learn about calligraphy at all helped him build a technology company? Absolutely not.
On paper, no. Yeah.
But you find later on in life that a lot of those things that you pursue because they're interests actually can drive real value for the sorts of like new things that you're trying to build and create.
Yeah.
And so if you take like that really big picture view, like him attending a couple of calligraphy classes because he was interested in it, provided so much value for like Apple software. And competitively, like no other software at the time was like allowing you to play around with fonts and be more creative with the sort of word processing that you were doing.
Wow.
And so like, that's just so illustrative of this idea that like pursue stuff that you're interested in, because it might actually lead to things down the road that do provide you those more like traditional forms of success that you're looking for.
Right. Yeah. Our life is like long and it's really full, and you actually don't know when something's going to come up and be useful, but you will know if you have an inkling of interest, of that real, like you're just kind of drawn towards it. At least it's coming through you. At least it's like something in you.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you listen to it, hopefully it'll pay off. I think you have to simultaneously be trying to discover where what you want has actually been conditioned into you. Does that make sense? It's like, because you might think you want to be a lawyer, and then really you're like, oh wait, no, that's like my family and my conditioning or my society's conditioning. So kind of simultaneous in that process, I think you need to be discovering who you are and what you want and where you're conditioned to conform, where you're conditioned to be what other people want.
Is that something that you feel as an actor is some level of conformity? I feel like actors, and I'm not an actor, so I'm kind of speaking out of my ass here, but like, I feel like you guys revere the concept of kind of like pushing boundaries and doing stuff. So it's a very different sort of set of conformity.
It is, because like the actual it itself, pursuing the arts, pursuing acting is kind of this counter conformity thing anyways. Of course, within that, there's ways you can conform.
Right.
Within anything, there becomes the norms that kind of get pushed. And it's like, I don't know if that leads to more success or not. Usually not.
Right.
Usually it's authenticity and finding your own path that lead to the most success. Especially when you're a kid actor, though, you're being conditioned because you're a kid. You don't know shit. And so you are being trained on like, you know, even like media training. You're like trained to like handle interviews certain ways and right, which makes sense at the time. Like looking back, I'm like, that makes sense. But the older I get, the more I'm like, you know, fuck all that. Like, fuck all that. I'm just going to be me in every fucking interview, good or bad. I'm just going to do me because that's a better overall model for my life than always trying to like answer things correctly or whatever, diplomatically or clean. Like, oh yeah. You know, we definitely had like some of that as kids for sure. You kind of become an idea of a good boy or good actor, and not like, yeah, you're an idea. It's like one step removed from actually being it. But I think a lot of kids do that.
Yeah.
I think we do that growing up. We actually, I have found part of my maturing is needing to let go of being a good boy.
What do you mean by good boy?
We grow up with ideas of how to please our parents or adults and be good so that we receive love, right? Like this is just a natural process of growing up. And that's good for growing up. You do need to have an idea of what the bounds are, what good is, what bad is, when you want to rebel. All those things are good in adolescence and in youth. But when you start to become an adult, you really have to see how many of my behaviors or how many of my choices are me trying to be a good boy for my parents or my whatever, the authority in life. Am I trying to be a good boy so that I receive love? Or do I actually have a set of principles and values? And that's why I'm being good, because I have actually chosen to be a man who lives his principles or lives his values. Like that's the shift for me from adolescence to adulthood is when I'm a kid, I want to be a good boy to receive love from others.
Yeah.
When I'm an adult, I want to be good because I actually have chosen a set of values and principles that I choose to stand by.
And the underpinning of that is self-confidence, right? It's the ability to say like, I'm comfortable with this idea that I'm not going to be universally loved or admired because I am comfortable with it.
Yes. Yeah. And if you're trying to be a good boy, you can't or a good girl, you can't be comfortable with it because you want that from everyone.
Yeah.
It took me till deep into my 20s to actually like literally to land that sentence you just said, which is like, I'm not going to be loved by everybody. And that's okay because I love myself. Whoa. Like literally it took fucking till my late 20s for that to land.
Was there a light bulb moment for you or did it just kind of gradually form?
I mean, there was a lot leading up to it. But it all came through the processing of like a major breakup. It took, whoa, this person who I was the best to and gave everything to and was the goodiest boy to still can disrespect me and hurt me so deeply, it actually, I'm glad it happened, because that led to this whole processing of like, whoa, even me giving my fullest to someone still might have them not see me. And it was like, okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
That means I need to live my truth, and I need to live my values and my principles, and be okay with the fact that some people aren't going to like fuck with that. Like, tight.
Yeah.
Tight. Great. I'm free. I'm more free anyways.
Love that.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it happened for you at an early enough stage of life where you got to now embrace the self-confidence that you have now.
Me too, man. Me fucking too. Yeah, me too. I was liberated by that. But literally, I needed to like be okay with the fact that like, oh, I'm going to make some people uncomfortable sometimes. And like, some people just aren't going to like me. Some people are going to misinterpret me. And like, I need to be like, cool, that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still never comfortable, like delivering bad news.
Oh no.
Like
God, no.
As a founder, I've had to let people go. I've had to like make tough decisions. That sucks. Like the worst days of the job are those days, and it never gets easy.
No.
If it ever gets easy, that's when I'll be scared.
Yeah. Because you'll have lost your
exactly. It
soul.
Shouldn't be easy. But having the confidence necessary to have those conversations and not just kind of roll over is so important.
Ooh. Okay, not only in business, but in life and in friendships, having the ability to have those uncomfortable but necessary conversations that must be met with confrontation, but not in a bad way, meaning confront, like you have to assert yourself into those conversations. You can't be passive.
Yeah.
The ability to face those, no matter how uncomfortable they are, that's something I'm still learning, but it's so important. It's something I still like avoid sometimes. I'm like, ooh, I'm avoiding this conversation for like months, and I'm trying to justify why, but really it needs to happen.
I'll tell you the tip that I always tell myself, which
Tell me.
Works maybe half the time, not perfect, but every time I ultimately do have those difficult conversations, I feel better afterwards. And on top of that, the conversations are never as bad as what I've built them up to be in my head.
Yes.
Yeah, like rarely are they the worst case scenario. Like usually they're like, I get through it. I'm like, wow, that was actually a lot easier than I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. In your head, you're like, okay, I'm going to fire this person and they're going to cry and throw things at me and tell me I'm a bad person. And it's not what happened.
Yeah. It's not what happens. They suck. Like, it's horrible.
Oh, yeah.
I feel bad about it.
Oh yeah.
But it's never what you build it up to be.
Yeah.
And people generally are more understanding than you think.
Yeah. Well, and you're a nice guy. I know this about you. And that doesn't always, those traits, being nice, like that skill set of being a nice, kind person has value in a lot of areas, not always in being a business owner.
That's true. People take advantage of you if you're too nice sometimes.
Exactly.
Which sucks.
Yeah.
But I would rather, I've thought about this a lot, and I would rather err on the side of being a little bit too nice and being taken advantage of a little bit than just like turning myself into an asshole just for the sake of it. So
that's fair.
I just view it as kind of like collateral damage, you know?
Yeah, that's fair.
Not that I like being taken advantage of, but
of course not.
It's like,
of course not.
I'd rather operate this business in a way that I feel really proud of, rather than, like revert to tactics that might be more ruthless, but that ultimately don't feel authentic to me or authentic to what we're trying to build at Onomie.
Yeah. Amazing, Sam. I love getting to talk to you. I'm glad you came on. I feel like we can have you back.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. And you're in year 3 of Onomie?
It's about to be year 3.
About to be year 3.
And this is a super exciting time because we're launching a new series. We have, in addition to Growing Up with Devon, we have Are You Kidding Me with Sydney Raz,
which is so great.
Really awesome. By the time this airs, we'll definitely have a couple episodes out.
Awesome.
We're set to shoot with the Los Angeles Chargers later this month.
Amazing.
At their practice facility. And that's a whole show that I kind of describe as like a mashup between Dirty Jobs and Mark Rober, if that kind of makes sense. Yeah. Where he's kind of exploring unique career environments and work environments and what makes those environments function in a way that I think can expose so many young adults to like the different career opportunities that are available to them that you might not ever think about on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. We're about to launch a new show with another really popular career creator, Sania El-Amin, which I'm excited about. And we're just in the mode now of just launching more and more series and other different formats of content that help young adults navigate the most critical part of life in my mind, which is this early adulthood phase.
Yeah. which is finding our actual footing in adulthood. It really is such a critical phase. And it takes, it's maybe a 15-year process.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It really is. Sometimes longer.
Exactly. Like that's kind of this whole exploration of this podcast is like, we have this fucking idea that growing up just happens, that you're just an adult and you're there. Like the shift from adolescence to adulthood is 15 years, maybe 20.
Yeah.
Like before you're actually, I'm just now starting to feel like, I actually feel like I have my feet on the ground in my own adulthood. And there's still areas of weakness that I need to strengthen. And it's nice to have some tools to like find ways through it. And I'm learning from so many people. But just that overall process is so much longer than anyone thinks.
It is. And one thing that I'm trying to do is just constantly make sure that I'm enjoying it as much as I can, because you don't get this time back. And this is the time to kind of tie everything together. This is the time when in your life you are able to take the most risks. You know, like once you get into, middle age, there are other demands on your time.
Yeah.
I'm someone who wants to start a family.
Yeah, I was gonna
and
say
so
kids.
That inhibits your ability to really take a lot of risks and make unconventional choices.
Yeah.
In old age, that's not really the best time to like take chances and take risks.
Right.
The most active years of your life are already behind you. So this is really the time to optimize for.
So enjoying taking these risks.
Enjoying taking the risks. And even if not enjoying, then just being comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And understanding that like the goal ultimately is to not be that old person who looks back with regret at what you didn't do.
Yeah. You'll look back and say, I did some shit.
Yeah. At least I tried.
I went to the Peace Corps. I started my own company.
Yeah.
I love it, Sam. You know how we do at the end of this pod. We like to leave our listeners with a little nugget of life survival guide advice. I mean, kind of our entire discussion, I feel like, was a lot of it.
I know. I'm like,
but do you have anything else?
Anything additional?
To, you know our audience and our listeners. Anything else you want to say to them, to young people about, unconventional choices, about solitude, about starting a business? I don't know.
One of the things that I think is really valuable as an entrepreneur is being comfortable with your own gaps of knowledge, your own weaknesses, and understanding that you don't necessarily need to be an expert in something to start a company that does it. And I think the humility associated with saying, I'm going to start a business about something that I'm passionate about and that I know that there's a market for, but that I'm going to make sure that I can cover my gaps through hiring or through advisors is just a really critical way of building a business that is efficient, but also one that you can really leverage your skills for success. I don't come from a media background, but I'm a founder of a media business. And I worked for a while in education between the Peace Corps and some other jobs I had afterwards. And so there are some transferable skills that I can pull from that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I took this plunge without the level of expertise in media that maybe could have helped this business like really start to thrive at the very beginning. But that's part of what I signed up for.
Sure.
And I think as an entrepreneur, you need to be comfortable with the fact that you might not have all of your ducks in a row when you're starting a company. The most important thing is like actually getting out there and trying to do it. And you'll figure out what gaps you have along the way and how you need to fill those gaps. And ultimately, hopefully, build a really successful company on the backs of that.
I love it. Sam. It's great to talk. And I love being part of Onomie and getting to make this podcast together.
We're
and
so
just
proud
getting
of this
to know
podcast.
you more, man.
We're so proud of this podcast and so proud of the work that you do to help elevate it, because it really, I think, is impacting so many young adults, and that's what we're here for.
Awesome, man. Sam, Rowen, great to have you. Friends, check out onomy.co, all the Onomie socials. Obviously growing up, smash that subscribe button if you haven't. Share us, review us, rate us.
Let me add a CTA here, because I'm always in the back end of our analytics in YouTube, and I'm seeing there's a lot of people who are not subscribed to the channel who are watching our videos. Hit the subscribe button.
What's that about, guys?
We create awesome content.
Yeah. Why you're watching but you're not subscribed? Just smash that shit, and then you'll get notifications when we got new episodes.
Yeah, and if you're interested in more of our Onomie content, we have a plethora of really cool series. You can find them at onomy.co.
Yes.
We're going to be launching a lot more.
And Are You Kidding Me with Sidney Raz? That dude he's so entertaining. I watched that first episode, and I just love watching him interact with people. He's such a good dude.
Yeah, the episode that I'm sure will be out by the time we release this is we filmed at a CBS news station.
Cool.
Going behind the scenes there, and it was so much fun. And I think the audience will love it.
Awesome. Check it out, and thanks for being here, Sam.
Thanks, Devon.